At some point in our lives, we were all guilty of eating something past its expiration date. Typically, some of us either reacted to it by feeling nothing or getting sick, but for others, something much more devastating transpires. Such a case involves a man by the name of JC. This was a recent incident that was reported in the New England Journal of Medicine in March 2021. After approximately 20 hours, the 19-year-old was admitted to the intensive care unit after eating restaurant leftovers that consisted of noodles, chicken, and rice. Upon eating this food, he initially developed a rash, which appeared all over his body. It did not end there. His abdomen became painful, and he was suffering from shock and multiple organ failure. This particular rash manifested itself as bumpy and scaly bruises that, with time, turned darker. Rather than stabilizing or improving, his physical state deteriorated even further when he started to experience abnormal breathing alongside vomiting and declining blood pressure. According to the report, JC had experienced septic shock, which is a life-threatening condition that involves the drastic decline of one's blood pressure after an infection. When urine and blood tests were further conducted, it was determined that he had Neisseria meningitis, a disease caused by bacteria in the blood. When observed closer, the rashes were much more sinister and actually indicated rapid skin necrosis, which basically meant his tissues and cells were dying quickly. The cell death was specifically caused by the formation of clots located in the dermal layer of the skin. Once the blood vessels collapse, the blood clotting protein overfunctions and causes clots at a faster rate. As these blood clots accumulate, it prevents oxygen from transferring to the organs and tissue. Because of this, the only way the doctors could save his life was by amputating his fingers and his legs. For nearly 2 weeks, he also used a pacemaker to assist his heart. The doctors were not sure why this dangerous bacteria was present in the food, but they were sure that it was the cause for all of this. When foods like pasta and rice are not properly stored, they can produce toxins that can be strong enough to kill you. This is because these grains naturally contain a bacteria known as Bacillus cereus, or B. cereus for short. According to the CDC, when this bacteria is left out for too long and heated, it creates a toxin. Interestingly, how this toxin affects people is more so based on a case-by-case basis, because in some instances, others can react by exhibiting much less drastic symptoms. JC's own roommate also ate the same noodles he did, but he only threw up. It was later discovered that although JC had received the meningococcal vaccine, he did not get its recommended booster shots. This likely might have contributed to the severe reactions, because meningococcal, although highly contagious, is also preventable by the vaccination series. Miraculously, this young man made a full recovery after the amputations. Documented in the Journal of Clinical Microbiology, there have been rare cases of individuals dying due to eating leftover food. Such an incident occurred in 2008 when a 20-year-old man passed away in his sleep because the night before he had consumed pasta that was both left over and unrefrigerated. To get into specifics, this pasta in particular was documented to have been made 5 days before and left out at room temperature. When he had returned from school, he microwaved his 5-day-old pasta and ate it. His day was described as follows. After his meal, he left his house to attend a sports event, only to return back home 30 minutes later. He was experiencing nausea, headache, and abdominal pain. For several hours, he was vomiting and took no medications. After 12 a.m., he slept, and when it was the next day, his parents discovered that he had died. An autopsy estimated his death to have occurred at 4 a.m., which would make it about 10 hours after eating the old pasta. They also discovered necrosis of the liver, adrenal glands, and signs of cardiac decline. Tests conducted found the presence of the bacteria B. cereus in the pasta, reminiscent of JC's case. This particular bacteria is quite common in food poisoning cases, and it could cause 2 specific types of poisoning, known as emetic and diarrheal. Emetic poisoning occurs due to heat-stable cereus-like toxins known to cause mitochondrial damage. Towards the end of the research paper, it emphasizes the importance of refrigerating prepared foods to prevent the growth of B. cereus cells, which would otherwise grow in high concentrations when left outside. When foods in general are placed in temperatures between 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 140 degrees Fahrenheit, this is known as a danger zone because temperatures ranging in these values create the perfect environment for microbes and bacteria to grow. The toxins in particular also aren't the type that just die when you apply heat. As a matter of fact, the chemicals are heat resistant in most cases and camouflage with the food. Oftentimes, they don't present themselves as a smell, color, or taste, which is the scariest part of all because the individual eating them won't suspect anything abnormal. The final case that I want to discuss is that of an outbreak of food poisoning in an entire family that led to the death of the youngest daughter, who was 7 years old. This particular case occurred in August 2003, and 5 children became sick after eating a pasta salad. It was prepared on Friday and taken to a picnic the very next day. The leftovers of this dish were then stored in the fridge until it was served again on the evening of Monday. Immediately after eating it, the 7-year-old girl reported that she was not able to breathe. She was then immediately sent to the hospital and left in a critical condition. She was in a coma and was observed to suffer from diffused bleeding and muscle cramps. She died after 13 hours and 20 minutes from eating the meal, with the cause of death being liver failure. The autopsy revealed that Bacillus was a causative agent and was found in her gut and spleen. The 4 other children who ate the same dish also began vomiting and were taken to the hospital, but they all ended up recovering and surviving. Similar to the other 2 cases, Bacillus was detected and isolated in the pasta and found to have caused organ failure, resulting from fatty degeneration. The theme that can be observed here is improperly stored food, the presence of bacteria and toxins, and organ failure resulting in fatal or near-fatal cases. Now, unlike the other 2 cases, this report actually was aware of the specific temperature that the dish was stored in, being a whopping 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit. This alone was what contributed to the very high concentration of bacteria, specifically reaching 100,000 colony-forming units per gram, accumulating in the span of those 3 days. What can we take away from this? For one, these cases honestly provided significant insight into the importance of storing food properly, something that sometimes goes over our heads and gets treated like second nature. I'm saying there's a whole process and mechanism for understanding how to store different types of foods. Timing is a key essential point, as well as the positional placement of the foods as well. WebMD states that food should be immediately stored in the fridge, while other sites recommend cooling the food for a bit before placing the food into the fridge in appropriate containers. Now, I personally was invested in these cases because not only were they devastating to hear about, but what happened to JC and the other individuals that were discussed can quite literally happen to anyone at any given time. Noting, however, food poisoning is commonly susceptible to pregnant women, children, and elderly people who have chronic diseases. We can prevent food poisoning and its serious reactions by being more mindful of taking care of preparing and storing food. Little things such as making sure we cover food with lids, wraps, or tinfoil, or washing our hands thoroughly before handling food are some steps to prevent the food from being contaminated and bacteria from growing. There are a plethora of websites that detail how you should store certain types of foods, so you guys should really take a moment and look through those. Make sure that those website links are ending with .gov or .edu because those are more trustworthy and reliable sources. These incidents were indeed depressing, so I hope we all can learn from this and apply in our own lives as well as our loved ones. As a huge fan of rice and pasta, I hope this video didn't scare anyone from eating those dishes because when I first heard about it, I genuinely did not go near pasta for like months. Not even joking here. Hope you guys found the video informative and please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting content.